I tested the best entry-level cameras out there, and I realized the perfect camera for one person might be completely different for someone else, because what really matters is your shooting style and what you're shooting. And if you don't know the specific features and specs to look out for, you might get a great camera that is simply a terrible choice for you, which is why I made this video to help you find the perfect beginner entry-level camera out there, regardless of your budget, shooting style, and content. The ZV-E10 is the most underrated camera for beginners and people just starting out in photos and videos, because it has a few pro features that you never really see in a camera at this level, and most people don't know to look out for. Also, if you want the best price on the ZV-E10 or any of the other cameras we talk about today, make sure to check out the links in the description down below. When it comes to the physical design, the body is ultra compact and it's really small enough to fit in a jacket pocket or even a purse. It only has one button to switch between photos, videos, and slow motion. But the best part about the ZV-E10 is that it has a specific button to instantly give you the blurry background effect, which everybody wants, skipping all of the technical stuff on your part. Plus, the built-in microphone is actually fantastic for vlogging, and it also has a side articulating screen so you can see yourself while recording or vlogging. And the autofocus is phenomenal, especially because most entry-level and beginner cameras don't usually have very good autofocus. Inside the ZV-E10, we have a beautiful 24 megapixel APS-C sensor, which shoots gorgeous 4K video at 24 and 30 frames per second, but it's not just regular 4K. It's actually upsampled from 6K, which means you get the quality of 6K, but in a smaller 4K file. And in terms of photos, it shoots at 10 frames per second with 14-bit RAW, meaning that you can shoot any kind of fast-moving action with this camera, but you also get a ton of flexibility when it comes to editing your photos. You can easily deliver high-level professional results just using the ZV-E10. The ZV-E10 also has great slow motion options where it allows you to shoot full HD at 60 frames per second for 2x slow motion and 120 frames per second for 5x slow motion. But what really sets the ZV-E10 apart from other entry-level cameras is one specific thing. Because it has cinema profiles like S-Log, HLG, and Cine profiles built right in. These color profiles give you a flatter image with more information, meaning you can actually edit these videos to look more cinematic, more professional, more high-end. And this is a feature you never really see in an entry-level camera. Overall, the ZV-E10 is a fantastic entry-level camera, but it's especially exciting for someone who's on a budget and wants to make more than just basic photos and videos, and you really want to take your work to the next level. The ZV-E10 is definitely a camera you can grow with. Although some of you guys may not like the fact that the ZV-E10 is so small, and you might want a camera with more heft to it, maybe a bigger grip, something that feels more like a professional big boy camera. And for you guys, I have something very special later in this list, so make sure to stick around. But also, I understand a lot of you guys just want to take photos and videos and have them look gorgeous, beautiful, right out of the camera without any work on your part. And if that sounds like you, we have to take a look at the next camera on this list, and that is the Canon M50 and its brand new big brother, the Canon R50. The Canon M50 is one of the easiest entry-level cameras to use, and everything looks phenomenal right out of the camera with minimal work on your part. Plus, it has a lot more in terms of design to satisfy a serious photographer. The body itself is fairly small and compact, but it has an electronic viewfinder at the top, which does make the body bigger, but it allows you to hold this camera up to your eye when shooting for that old school camera feel. The button layout is really simple and straightforward, but it does have an additional mode dial at the top, which has shooting presets, meaning you can set this camera up exactly for what you're shooting, meaning it's easier to shoot with. It does have really good internal microphones, but it's not quite as good as the ZV-E10, and for the most part, I would probably still recommend an external microphone when it comes to vlogging. But it does have a side articulating screen, making it easy to vlog, and the autofocus is really reliable, so if you're vlogging with it, you know you'll always be in focus. And the side articulating screen is also a touch screen which has touch autofocus. You can simply tap something on the screen and it will immediately catch focus. Inside the M50, you have a 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor, which is pretty similar to the ZV-E10, but what sets it apart are the Canon colors. Canon naturally has this warm, rich look to their images, meaning everything looks good right out of camera, and skin tone and people's faces look especially beautiful, meaning people look much more attractive on the Canon M50 compared to other brands. In terms of photos, it shoots 10 frames per second with RAW, making the photos really easy to edit, and you can really take these photos way beyond basic photos. But video is sadly not as happy of a story. But I have a fix for it. It shoots 4K at 24 and 30 frames per second, but it crops into your sensor, which zooms in all your shots, meaning the image quality isn't as great anymore because you're throwing away half the sensor. This does make it harder to vlog and get wide shots in 4K, but it does shoot full HD at 24 and 30 frames per second without a crop, along with 60 frames per second in slow motion. Now, if you're not a fan of the crop like me, Canon has just released a brand new camera, the Canon R50, which is only $100 more, which gives you 4K at 24 and 30, no crop, and it also does 120 frames per second at full HD for 5 times slow motion, and it also has 10-bit color, which makes your colors look even better than the Canon M50. Because I'm telling you, if you play your cards right, an entry-level camera does not have to be a weak camera. And if you really want to see the most powerful entry-level camera out there, there's a camera at the end of this list, or somewhere near the end of the list, that has amazing specs. I'm not going to tell you where, but make sure to stick around for it. The Canon M50 is still a fantastic camera, but for $100 more, you can get a lot more with the Canon R50. Both cameras are really ideal for photographers, especially people who like to use the electronic viewfinder, which is something the Sony ZV-E10 does not have. And with Canon colors, it puts everything on easy mode. Everything out of this camera just looks beautiful. And if you're someone who likes Canon colors and wants to do mainly photography, you should also check out the Canon T7. It's the exact same sensor, but in a smaller, cheaper DSLR body, and it only shoots 3 frames per second. The video in the T7 is not good, but if you're someone that's just doing casual photos here and there, it's a great camera and it's at a really low price. But if you want a camera that does great photos and videos, but also feels like a real camera in your hands, you definitely want to take a look at this next camera. The Nikon Z30 was designed from the ground up for photo and video enthusiasts, and especially content creators. The reason the Nikon Z30 is such a popular entry-level camera right now is because when it comes to design and specs, it's pretty much what every single content creator, photographer, and video shooter has been asking for. But there are a few things about the Nikon Z30 that you should be aware of because it might make it a bad choice for some of you. When it comes to design, the Z30 absolutely nails it. It has a nice deep grip with a faux leather finish, making it really comfortable for walking around and vlogging. Plus, it has a flat top, so you can easily mount your video microphone and accessories. Although I have to say, the internal microphones in the Nikon Z30 are honestly the best. They're better than the ZV-E10, better than the Canon M50. You really don't need an external microphone with this. The best part about the Z30, however, is the lens. Most kit lenses that come with the camera are not that great, but the lens with the Z30 is exceptionally sharp and it really doesn't feel like a kit lens. It's really solid build quality with a really wide focus ring for manual focusing, and it also has vibration reduction for smooth handheld photos and video. But what about the specs? Because this is where things with the Z30 get kind of controversial and why most people don't like this camera. In terms of the sensor, it has a 20 megapixel sensor, which is a little bit lower resolution than most cameras, which are 24 or 26 megapixels, but the 20 megapixel sensor is actually a hidden advantage. By using a 20 megapixel sensor, you have bigger pixels on your sensor, which make this camera better in low light condition, and you also get less noise in your photos and videos. And because of the way the sensor in the Z30 is built, it's actually still just about as detailed as a 24 megapixel sensor because it doesn't use a softening filter on the sensor. When it comes to video, it shoots at 4K at 24 and 30 frames per second in 8-bit color. Sadly, the video in the Nikon Z30 is not upsampled, which means it's just a native 4K, but the video quality is still fantastic. For photos, it shoots at 11 frames per second in 14-bit RAW, which is pretty much the same as every other camera on this list. It's good for fast-moving action, and the photos are easy to edit. The in-camera colors on the Z30 are much cooler than the Canon colors and they're not quite as warm. Personally, I prefer the M50 colors, but it really comes down to personal preference. And if you're a fan of slow motion like me, the Nikon Z30 also does 60 and 120 frames per second in full HD. When you look at the design and specs of the Nikon Z30, it's actually one of the best entry-level cameras for content creators, for people just starting out in photos and videos, and people who want a camera that feels like a real camera. The Nikon Z30 is probably the closest thing you can get in an entry-level price point to a real big boy DSLR camera. But there is something the Nikon Z30 is missing, and every single camera on this list so far is also missing. If you want an entry-level camera with raw horsepower and next-gen technology, something that's like the Ferrari of entry-level cameras, you have to check out the Canon R10. The R10 is without a doubt the most powerful entry-level camera on the market today because it has 3 features that Canon has specifically put in here to completely destroy the competition. On the surface level, it honestly just looks like a normal mirrorless camera. It's not that much bigger or different than the Canon M50, and it also has an electronic viewfinder for my serious photographers. The button layout is pretty straightforward and simple. It's pretty much what you expect in an entry-level camera. But what's inside the R10 is the impressive part. It has a 24 megapixel sensor, same as the other cameras, but it can shoot at 15 frames per second in mechanical shutter mode with a frame buffer or 460 shots, and it has 23 frames per second electronic shutter mode, but it also has a special mode that lets you shoot 30 frames per second of raw photos. That's as fast as video. With the R10, it's pretty much impossible to miss your shot. Along with the ultra-fast next-gen autofocus, this is an ideal camera for wildlife, sports, or any kind of fast-moving action. But video is even more impressive. It shoots 4K at 23 and 30 frames per second, and it's oversampled from 6K, so it's that crispness of 6K, but in a small 4K file size. And it also has 10-bit color, meaning you can really push this camera to get pro-level results if you wanted to. Sadly, the R10 does not have cinema profiles. The ZV-E10 is still the only camera at this price point that does that. And the Canon R10 also has the brand new Canon RF mount. This means you can add a speed booster to your R10, meaning you can take it from an APS-C sensor to a full-frame sensor look. And Canon just released brand new primes for the Canon RF mounts, a 50mm, 16mm, and an 85mm that come at a pretty affordable price point, but because they're RF lenses, they look much better than the competition. And if you want to check out those lenses, the Canon R10 or any of the cameras we talked about today, and you want to get the best pricing possible, make sure to check out the links in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.